Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. This video is going to talk about another classifications of consonant. We're going to talk about manners of articulation. On the previous video, we have already talked about the other classifications of a consonant, which is the state of the glottis and the place of articulation. Now we're going to talk about the third basic classifications of a consonant, which is manners of articulation. Check this video, guys. So, what is manners of articulation? Manners of articulation is how the airstream is modified in the vocal tract to produce the sounds of consonant. The airstreams is the air that is blown out from the lung to the windpipe to the trachea, goes to larynx, goes to the vocal cord, and go to the vocal tract. So what is vocal tract? We have already discussed it over and over that vocal tract is the human speech organs, such as oral cavity and inside the oral cavity and the nasal cavity. So the manners of articulation is how the articulator, especially the active articulators, is modified so it can perform an articulation inside the vocal tract to produce the consonant sound. How is also mean as the way to make the consonant sound. Manner of articulation in this case also mean how the articulators articulated in the vocal tract to produce the consonant sound. The first classification of consonant based on the manners of articulation is stop sound or plosive sound. Stop or plosive consonant is a complete closure at the same point in the vocal tract behind which the air pressure builds up and can be released explosively. The sound of a consonants that classify into stop or plosive are t, d, k, g, p, and p. Once of the glottal stop or once of the stop sound, which is included into the glottal on place of articulation, is called as a glottal stop. The glottal stop is made by spacing the vocal cord. It made on the vocal cord, made by the vocal cord in a closed position, position number 4. The second classifications of consonant based on the manners of articulation is fricative. So what is fricative? Fricative is the consonant sound that is made by forming a nearly complete stoppage of the airstream. So the airstream from the lung, it's going to be almost completely stopped in the oral cavity while it is released very slowly until it makes the sounds of buzzing. That's why the fricative sound is also called as buzzing sound or hissing sound because it is hissing. What are the consonant sounds that include into fricative? There are f, v, s, z, z, sh, sh, f, and v. So there are 9 fricative sounds or 9 hissing sounds. The third is affricates. What is affricate? Affricate is stopping the airstream and then release the articulator slightly so that the friction produce. So first you are going to obstruct the airs that come from the larynx to build up of pressure in the oral cavity, and then the airstream it's going to slightly release by making a high friction from the articulator. Okay, so affricate is the combination of the stop sound and the fricative sound, because first the air is stopped in the oral cavity and it's released just like in the fricative sound, release slowly, so it makes a high friction. It makes a high hissing sound, like the sound of ch. The sound of ch is the combination of the stop sound of t and the fricative of sh, sh, or sh. So it becomes ch. The second sound is j. J is made by the combination of d as the stop sound, and it's release the sound in a high friction by the sounds of fricative of uz, uz. So the combination of both become the sound of j. The fourth is nasal. Nasal is a complete closure at the same point in the mouth, but the soft palate being lowered. The air escapes through the nose. So, when you still remember about the movement of the soft palate together with the uvula, you know that the soft palate is an active articulator that can be moved upward and downward. When the soft palate is moving upward, then the air from the larynx is going to come out through the oral cavity. And if there is an articulation on the oral cavity, then it's going to make the sounds of oral. On the vice versa, when the soft palate together with uvula it's moving downward, then the air from the larynx it's blocked to the oral cavity. So the air is going to come out through the nasal cavity or nose cavity. When it makes an obstruction or the articulators on the nasal or nose cavity, then it's going to make the nasal sound. That's why when you catching the flu, then you won't be able to make the sounds of nasal perfectly because the air is somehow blocked to the nasal cavity. So what are the sounds that include into the nasal cavity? There are 3. And 5 is liquids. Liquids consists of 2. The first liquid is partial closure or lateral. Lateral or partial closure is there is an obstruction formed by the articulator, but it is not narrow enough to stop the airflow or to cause friction. So when you make the sounds of or l, the tongue is obstructed, form very narrow to the alveolar ridge, and cause the air is blocked on the tongue. When the air is blocked, so it's making an obstruction, so it also makes the sound of l or l. The second liquid is intermittent closure or roll or retaflex. What is retaflex? A series of rapid intermittent closure or tap made by flexible organs on firmer surface. So when you make the sound of you're going to find that your tongue is rolling in a very rapid intermittent closure. It's roll, it flap up to the positions of alveolar ridge. The organs is firm and very tense. And that's when you make the sound of or r, like in rhyme, right. 6 is glides. Glide is made by only slight closure the manners of articulation or the classifications of articulation or the based on its moving from one point to another point, and it's moving very quick, an articulation or sliding or cause an obstruction, so that can produce the sounds of the sounds that it's gliding. Okay. See you on the next video. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Or